The bill would introduce a framework to develop a guaranteed livable basic income, and we are very, very, very pleased to be having this press conference today on the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty.
The problem with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money. This famous line by former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher reminds everyone that while government handouts may sound good, someone still has to foot the bill. But does Senator Kim Pate have any idea what the government is about to do? Instead of tackling issues like inflation, making sure Canadians have affordable housing, dealing with immigration problems, or offering cheaper fuel for common citizens, they're gearing up for another experiment, this time with the universal basic income. In today's video, we will dig deep into the universal basic income debate in Canada and why the government seems to be just making life hell for the people with their new policy. Universal basic income, or UBI, is a social and economic policy in which every citizen, regardless of their social or economic status, receives a regular and unconditional sum of money from the government. So whether someone is struggling financially, enjoying a middle-income lifestyle, or sitting atop a fortune, the sum remains the same for everyone. It's worth noting that discussions around UBI often involve debates around the amount of the universal income. During the 2020 U.S. presidential campaign, Andrew Yang suggested a figure of $1,000 per month as a universal income for every American. In the context of Canada, while the country has not yet implemented a national UBI program, there has been considerable discussion and experimentation with the concept. Notably, the Mincome experiment in Manitoba, conducted from 1974 to 1979, provided a glimpse into the potential benefits of such a program. But recently, there's been a renewed interest in UBI in Canada. In the last month, the Canadian government has been considering the implementation of a UBI. The Senate studied a bill that proposes the introduction of a framework for a policy guaranteeing access to a livable income for every individual over the age of 17. Certainly, it appears that the Trudeau government is resorting to a last-ditch plan due to the impact of their actions on Canada. A striking feature upon arrival or observation in Canada is the prevailing cost of living crisis. The increasing cost of living has pushed nearly half of Canadians close to their limits. Many Canadians can't even entertain the idea of purchasing a house. Basic necessities such as eggs and bread have transformed into unattainable luxuries for a considerable number of people. Adding to the challenges bestowed by the government, many Canadians won't be able to afford gifts for their loved ones during the upcoming holiday season. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Inflation is on the rise. The government is well aware of this, and it is precisely the reason that they have revisited discussions about universal basic income. While it's understandable that assistance for those struggling in the economy is generally welcomed, let's face reality. UBI sounds like a good idea at first, but it is a terrible concept if the government genuinely cares about fostering a flourishing and healthy society. Unfortunately, it appears that the government might be more inclined towards societal decay rather than sustainable progress. The government and politicians may say that safety nets such as universal basic income are a solution to prevent the common man from slipping further into poverty or homelessness. However, one must question them. When allowing a substantial influx of immigrants to secure jobs and build lives, does this not come at the expense of the local population? Where do all the concerns for poverty and homelessness go when discussions about immigration arise? It seems like the government is creating a sort of Frankenstein monster and then attempting to find mediocre solutions like UBI to control the consequences. However, it's becoming increasingly evident that this approach might not work. The inherent flaws in the structure of UBI in the long run have a negative impact on the Canadian economy. First and foremost, UBI comes with a big problem. It will make some people not want to work. The guaranteed income would make working seem less appealing, making it easier for people to choose not to work. This creates a situation where some individuals find it more tempting to stay inactive, putting more pressure on those who keep working while also giving more rewards to those who choose not to work. An analogy that fits here is like a bird under the nest that never learns to fly. It seems like the Trudeau government is moving toward a vision where Canadians become lazy and content with doing nothing, like sitting on sofas without any motivation for meaningful work. It would have been better if the government had done some proper research before promoting such an idea. For example, experiments like the Basic Income pilot project in Finland suggested that while UBI didn't significantly reduce overall employment, it did make some participants less motivated to work. Considering the possible long-term effects, there are already worries about how productive Canadian companies will be. It's disheartening to see another questionable policy being pushed in the Senate. But even if the government decides to go with it, can someone explain how they would pay for it? Funding UBI might mean higher taxes, which will hurt businesses and discourage investment. This will potentially slow down the economy and lead to job losses. Historically, high taxation has been linked to economic challenges. In the 1970s and 1980s, countries like Canada faced economic difficulties, partly because of high tax rates. And if the government now raises taxes to fund the UBI program, will it be fair for the citizens? And if the government doesn't raise taxes, are Canadians ready for more budget deficits? Is this the last stage of Trudeau's incompetence? Speaking of incompetence, if a UBI program is financed through increased government spending, it will result in inflation. When more money is injected into the economy without a corresponding increase in goods and services, prices will go up. However, it's crucial to understand that the money for increased government spending is typically obtained through methods like money printing. This essentially involves creating more money, seemingly out of thin air. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many countries, including Canada, rolled out large-scale economic relief programs. While these weren't UBI, they did involve significant government spending. According to Statistics Canada, the inflation rate in Canada jumped from 0.7% in January 2020 to 3.4% in July 2021, showing a considerable increase. But the government is still experimenting again with unrealistic policies. But the saying, "Fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me," seems to be the sentiment among Canadians now. It appears that Canada is becoming an experimental subject where the government is conducting various experiments with citizens' money. Taking on the pandemic again, the government distributed a considerable amount of free money, which eventually led to the highest levels of inflation in years. When there's too much money chasing too few goods, inflation is inevitable. The citizens will ultimately bear the brunt of that free money with higher prices. As the costs of everything rise, citizens will then require even more money, perpetuating the cycle. Some may suggest taxing the rich or investors, but overtaxation seldom works. The wealthy and investors always find ways to safeguard their profits, and the wealthy can simply relocate and avoid paying high taxes. As the saying goes, you can't get something for nothing. But it seems a more rational approach might be addressing the main reasons for the increasing costs, like inflation, inefficient government spending, and housing supply shortages. While UBI may offer temporary relief, it fails to directly deal with the underlying factors that contribute to the rising cost of living. To control inflation, a comprehensive approach involving both monetary and fiscal policies is essential. The Bank of Canada can regulate inflation by adjusting interest rates, influencing the overall economic climate. At the same time, the government can play a key role in reducing inflationary pressures by cutting spending on non-essential programs. Confronting housing supply shortages demands a strategy involving regulatory reforms and incentives to stimulate construction. Simplifying zoning and permitting procedures stands out as a crucial step in speeding up housing development. But does the current government have the spine or will to implement these measures? That's the big question. If you like this video and want to learn more about one of the reasons Canada is considering universal basic income, check out this video here. And if this video brought value to you, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing the video. Thanks for watching.